In the beginning, it was all pain, distrust, and silence. When Kemi and Akil crossed paths at that dusty marketplace, no one could have guessed that a single gesture would change not just their lives, but entire communities. But not every story ends at happily ever after. Because true love isn't proven in times of success. It's tested in the middle of the storm. Today, Kemi wakes up in a hospital bed. No memories, no familiar faces. But what about the heart? Could her heart still remember what her mind has forgotten? This next chapter isn't just about winning someone back, it's about a love so deep. Even amnesia couldn't erase it. Kemi and Akil were no longer just names. They had become symbols of justice, dignity, and transformation. In every city where a new community market was inaugurated, their names were painted on banners, walls, and echoed through radio interviews. People applauded them on the streets. Vendors told their story as if describing real-life heroes. But behind each ribbon-cutting ceremony were sleepless nights, hard decisions, endless travel, and exhaustion that didn't make it into the headlines. And it was during one of these routine site visits in a construction zone deep in Ogun State that everything changed. Akil was speaking with engineers. Kemi walked among workers, listening to suggestions, jotting down notes. She was no longer the same woman he'd met at the market, but the essence remained, strong, focused, intense. She wore tailored slacks, a beige button-up with rolled sleeves, her hair now well kept in a tight bun. Her smile came easily when someone called her name, and even in her tired eyes, there was fire. But all it took was 1 second of distraction. The metal stairs were still slick from last night's light rain. Kemi descended quickly, clipboard in one hand, steadying herself with the other. She slipped. The sound of her body hitting the metal echoed through the warehouse, like time itself had stopped. Her head struck the third step hard. A scream cut through the noise. The clipboard skidded across the floor. A worker ran, but Akil was faster. He rushed forward, shoes soaked in puddles, dropped to his knees, trembling hands reaching for her face. "Breathe, please just breathe," he whispered, as if pleading with reality to rewind. The ambulance arrived quickly, but the ride to the hospital felt endless. Every bump in the road made him grip her arm tighter, as if holding her spirit in place. Her eyes were closed. Blood seeped through her scalp. Her skin, usually so full of life, looked frighteningly pale. At the hospital, the medical team worked fast. Scans, stitches, MRIs. The blow had caused head trauma. The next few days would be critical. And the doctors warned him, don't get your hopes up. It might be temporary amnesia or it might not. In the armchair beside her bed, Akil sat in silence. No calls, no meetings, just waiting, watching. With every slow breath rising in her chest, he searched for signs of awareness. He remembered the market, the first glance, the quiet wedding, the laughter on nights when they had nothing. So many memories, now hanging by the fragile thread of one person's recall. And that person lay still, untouched, like a book with its pages glued shut. On the morning of the 4th day, her fingers moved, just barely, but enough to make him jump. Her eyes fluttered, lids opened, pupils dilated under the hospital light. Kemi was waking up. The doctor rushed in, gestured for calm. Akil stepped back, heart pounding. "Kemi, can you hear me?" the doctor asked gently. She blinked, took a breath, and whispered, barely audible, "Where am I?" It felt like hope. But when Akil stepped closer and said her name, voice trembling with emotion, her reaction shattered him. Her body stiffened, brow furrowed, eyes suspicious. She stared for several seconds, as if searching a corrupted file. "Sorry, are you a doctor too?" she asked sincerely. The words hit like a blade. He didn't answer, just stepped back, because in that moment, he knew she didn't remember. Not him, not even herself. The doctor calmly explained, "Kemi, you were in an accident. You're safe now, but it may take time." She scanned the room. Machines, cold lights, the IV in her arm. It all seemed more familiar than the man standing there with eyes full of tears. Akil didn't push, didn't speak, just watched, like a man witnessing the love of his life wake up, with no idea they ever loved. Her hospital chart was filled with details, but none could explain the emptiness in her gaze. His touch, once natural, now avoided. His words, once soft and warm, now met with hesitation. And his name, once a home, now echoed nowhere. Kemi had woken up, but part of her was still asleep. Here at African Village Story, every tale holds a secret. Kemi lost her memory. Akil never lost hope. They've already overcome the impossible once, but can love survive when the heart forgets everything? Subscribe now and turn on notifications, because the next chapter might be the moment when everything changes or disappears forever. Even with Akil beside her, Kemi pulls away. The hospital bedsheet feels like her last shield against the world. Every movement is hesitant, involuntary. Her eyes, clouded by confusion, can't hold a steady gaze. She looks at the man in front of her like someone facing a dangerous stranger, and deep down, that's exactly how she feels. Something in her chest screams for protection, though she can't tell where the threat is coming from. When the doctors come in and explain the diagnosis, no one breathes. The amnesia is partial. It might last days, months, or never fade. The happy memories are gone. That time of light has become a blind spot. Only sensations remain, and they're not comforting. There's fear in the way Kemi pulls back whenever Akil tries to get close. There's anguish in how she clenches her fingers into the sheets. And there's pain, an old pain maybe born in the streets, or in the silences she carried through a life full of uncertainty. When he plays the wedding video, she turns her face. She sees two people smiling, dancing, promising the world, but she doesn't recognize herself there. Her heart, instead of warming, withdraws. It could all be an act. And what if it's just another trap dressed up as love? The wedding dress is carefully pulled out of the suitcase. Light fabric, delicate lace, and a scent that somehow survived the passing of time. But the touch that once meant dreams now stirs discomfort. The concrete memories won't come back. Only scattered flashes, a staircase, a scream, a fall. The rest is blank. And that blankness isn't peace, it's absence. It's as if Kemi's mind has built a wall, and behind it, locked away, is everything Akil wants to reclaim. The love, the trust, the days when she used to smile just because he walked into the room. But on her side, all she sees is uncertainty. Some nurses say amnesia can cause emotional regression, that in those cases, people protect themselves with whatever remains. Instincts. And Kemi's instincts scream, stay away. One night, she wakes up crying in silence. The lack of memory is now replaced by the presence of fear. How can she trust a man who says he loved her deeply, but doesn't trigger a single recollection? How can she give her body to a space her heart doesn't recognize? Trauma speaks louder. Old wounds find new hiding places in her forgetfulness. Not even the light in Akil's eyes can pierce through this dark room. Still, he doesn't give up. He spends his days building bridges, brings flowers, plays old songs, whispers jokes that once made her laugh, lays on the table the necklace she wore when they opened their first store, but all he gets is a polite nod and a distant thank you, as if they were strangers sharing the same roof. His love turns into patience, and the pain into silence. There's no room for desperation. Where love is forced to wait, one wrong move could push her even further, so he learns the art of staying close, without pressing too hard. Ordinary moments now feel loaded. When she walks through the garden and pauses near the orange tree she planted months ago, her eyes drift. No memory returns, but something stirs, a faint tremble in her fingers, a sigh she can't explain. When she holds a mug engraved with the names Kemi and Akil, her hand hesitates. Everything around her feels familiar, and yet strange, as if her heart is trying to send signals that her mind can't yet decode. That's the conflict the body remembers, the soul reacts, but reason remains clouded. In this fragile space, every attempt at closeness feels like stepping through a minefield. During a session with her therapist, Kemi admits she gets chills when she looks at the photos. Not out of fear of the man, but because she doesn't understand why it all feels so intimate. There's a void between her and her own story. And in that gap lie questions she can't silence. What if all this is just another way to control her? What if once again her vulnerability is being used to cage her freedom? That instinct to protect herself is what kept her alive. And now, even in the face of real love, it's still the compass she follows. She avoids touch, avoids eye contact, but most of all, avoids the thought that terrifies her most, the idea that she may have once loved and forgotten. Because forgetting who hurt you is one thing, but forgetting who healed you? That's a deeper kind of pain. So Akil chooses not to demand her memories. He offers his presence instead, refuses to be a painful reminder, tries again to become her safe place. But rebuilding this love isn't something he can do alone. The next step must come from her heart, and that step still hasn't come. Has your heart ever wanted to get closer, but your mind screamed, "Be careful"? If you've ever felt that tension, leave a comment below. I know how it feels to struggle with trust. Someone reading might need to know they're not alone in this messy fight between feeling and self-protection. Behind the tinted windows of the car parked outside the hospital, eyes that were once so steady now stared into nothingness. The man known across the country for making cold, quick decisions couldn't find a single argument to convince his own heart to remain calm. In the hospital hallways, no one saw him fall apart. But inside the car, far from the flash of cameras and his posture as a leader, his fingers trembled. He held a white rose as if it were the last fragile link to the woman who no longer recognized him. And while the world outside kept spinning, everything inside came to a halt, frozen by the pain of being forgotten. In the hospital room, the woman lying in bed appeared calm, but it was only her body. Inside, everything was chaos. No name, no familiar face, not even the comfort of a single safe memory, just blurry images, disconnected emotions, and the suffocating sense of being in enemy territory. Whenever he got close, her eyes narrowed, her body stiffened, and her breathing grew heavy. It wasn't fear of him, it was fear of what he represented, and that hurt more than any spoken rejection, because it wasn't anger, it was absence, and for someone who had built an entire life beside her, that was devastating. The doctor tried to explain in technical terms: traumatic amnesia, blocked emotional responses, uncertain recovery. But none of those clinical phrases could capture what was happening in that man's soul. Standing by the bed where the love of his life now slept, he felt like a stranger. The woman who once smiled next to him before a cheering crowd, who walked with him through alleys and stages, now turned her face away. And what cut deepest was knowing there was no one to blame. No fight, no betrayal, no mistake. What separated them now was simply the void. Gently, he chose not to invade her space. He brought flowers but never insisted she take them, showed her photo of them laughing on trips at the market at the altar. Each image was a desperate attempt to spark even a flicker of memory. He reintroduced the house as if he were a host, showing her around a neutral place, even though it was the home where they once made plans. He prepared her room with the little details she used to love, the scent of her favorite soap, the soft cotton blanket she used to say was cozier than any expensive duvet. But none of it worked, and the more he tried, the more the rejection grew. In the young woman's confused mind, everything felt too neat, too polished, too safe, raised in environments of tension, abandonment, and emotional drought. Luxury and excessive care felt more like traps than affection. Every perfectly organized corner of the house echoed the muffled screams of her childhood. Every flower he brought unknowingly triggered memories of fake apologies from those who had hurt her. Even his silence, once a sign of respect, now sounded like control. And the house, once a refuge, began to feel like an invisible cage. The house staff tried to help, but she interpreted every glance as a judgment. She felt watched, and anything she didn't understand turned into a threat. The feeling of being measured, evaluated, tested, even if none of that was actually happening, created a constant state of tension. She didn't trust, not the furniture, not the man who claimed to be her husband, not the smiles she received, and most of all, not even her own intuition, because she no longer knew where her fear was coming from. The man, in turn, began to rethink every gesture, tried to interpret her reactions like someone learning a forgotten language. He'd spend hours observing her from a distance, noting when she looked down or furrowed her brow, searching for clues, talking to the doctor about emotional triggers, about reconnection through scent, touch, and music. He even asked them to play recordings of the marketplace where they first met, hidden in a small speaker in the garden. But nothing changed, and hope, little by little, began to dissolve like perfume in the wind. Still, there was one small detail that refused to disappear. At night, when she thought no one was looking, she would touch the picture frames with a delicate, almost reverent hand. She wouldn't ask who the man in the photo was, but she wouldn't turn it away either. She'd stare, touch the glass, and for a few seconds close her eyes, as if something inside her was trying to remember, or maybe just feeling, even without remembering. That same night, while everyone else slept, he went down to the living room and sat in the armchair. In the dim light, he held an old note, handwritten by her, with just 2 lines. "Don't ask me to trust. Teach me that I can." Reading those words again, he realized he had been trying to force a memory, when what he really needed was to relearn how to earn her heart. And that's when he made a choice. He would no longer repeat the past. If he couldn't have back the wife he once knew, then he would get to know the woman standing before him now. No pressure, no expectations, no demands for memories. Because maybe what had once connected them was never just the memories, but something deeper, something that even amnesia couldn't erase. When love fights alone, it hurts even those who are just watching. If you believe they can still find their way back through all this pain, leave a heart in the comments. Sometimes one heart is all it takes to say, "I still believe." The clinic garden was the only place where Kemi could breathe. The trees swayed gently, as if they understood the storm raging inside her. She always sat on the same bench, beneath the shade of a yellow ipe tree, where the birds seemed to sing melodies made of memories her mind couldn't decode. In that quiet space filled with fallen leaves, Amadi appeared. Familiar face from a part of the past she still couldn't access, now presenting himself as an ally. His voice was soft, his pauses carefully measured, like someone approaching a wounded animal. And that's exactly how Kemi felt, wary, cornered, memoryless, and full of invisible scars. Dressed modestly and wearing a look of quiet understanding, Amadi introduced himself as a friend who had also suffered at Akil's hands. He said he had once worked for him, trusted him too much. He told stories, laced with pain and manipulation, mixing truth with distortion so convincingly that every phrase sounded like a revelation. Kemi listened in silence, trying to assemble the pieces of a shattered puzzle. Words like manipulative, control, and pity fell like cold droplets on already sensitive skin, and he made it all seem like he was there for her, for truth, for justice. With subtle gestures and eyes always watching her reactions, Amadi kept planting seeds of doubt. "Do you really think he would have married someone like you if it weren't out of guilt?" The question hung in the air like thick smoke. Kemi looked away, biting her lip. The dress she wore, the expensive shoes, it all suddenly felt like a borrowed costume. The emptiness of not remembering her past now gave way to the shame of not knowing if it was even real. The idea that she had only been a charity case made her stomach turn. The fear of having been deceived hurt more than any fall. Sensing the impact of his words, Amadi offered support. He spoke of alternative therapies and people who could help her reconstruct her identity independently. "You need to know who you are, beyond his shadow," he said with a gentle smile that hid poison. And among the web of half-truths, he dropped his final bait, a supposed letter allegedly written by Akil, confessing that everything he'd done was out of guilt and for his public image. Kemi never saw the letter, but the mere mention of it was enough to awaken a new kind of unrest, one that didn't just ache in her head, but in her chest. The garden, once a place of refuge, now felt like a stage of conspiracy. Every flower, every branch seemed to bend beneath the weight of the poisoned words that had been planted there. Doubt began to sprout like weeds. Kemi started to avoid Akil, not out of anger, but fear. Fear that the face she saw every day, the one trying to win her back, might be the same one that had once caged her. Her heart, already wounded, was now torn between emptiness and the haunting feeling that maybe she had been naive all along. Amadi left the clinic as quietly as he had arrived. He didn't need to say much. The seed was already planted, and the most painful part was realizing that even without proof, doubt alone was enough to push 2 hearts apart. Hearts that had once recognized each other without saying a word. The silence between Kemi and Akil returned, but this time it wasn't confusion, it was distrust. And in that kind of silence, even the truest love is at risk of getting lost. But the heart, even when wounded, has a memory of its own, and sometimes it's in the deepest pain that it starts beating the loudest. Do you believe that malicious words can truly separate 2 hearts that were meant to be? Tell us in the comments, yes or no. Let's see how many still believe true love can outlast even the cruelest lies. The night felt like all the others, quiet, with a soft breeze drifting through the clinic windows. But something in the air was different. Kemi moved slowly around the room, her fingers gliding along the spines of old books brought from home because they were her favorites. She didn't know why she stopped at that particular worn-out volume. Maybe instinct, maybe just a craving to touch something that felt real. As she opened its yellowed pages, a long dormant scent rose, lavender, strong enough to make her close her eyes and breathe deeply. The fragrance stirred a tightness in her chest, longing she couldn't name. Without understanding why, she raised her hand to her face and felt tears fall. She cried without knowing why. On the dresser beside the bookshelf, a small photo frame rested. In it, two figures smiled at each other like the world beyond them didn't exist. The woman's eyes in the photo were hers, but the light in them no longer seemed to belong to the same soul. Kemi reached out, touched the glass gently, as if trying to access a memory through a fogged-up mirror. The emotional impact was sudden. Something inside her reacted even as her mind resisted. She closed her eyes and then came the flashes. Disconnected fragments, like pieces of a forgotten film. A brown-skinned hand caressing her face tenderly. A warm voice, low and soft, saying her name in a way that made her entire body tremble. The smell of morning coffee, the sound of muffled laughter in the shower. But each image vanished before it could fully form. It was as if the past was screaming from within, but still lacked the strength to tear through the veil of forgetfulness. Confused, Kemi took 2 steps back, hugged her own body, and sat on the nearby couch. Her head throbbed, not from injury, but from an internal battle, a desperate effort to remember something that seemed to live between the lines of her own heart. Her body longed for something, but her mind refused to believe. This is more common than people think in deep trauma. When in shock, the brain blocks not just pain, but everything emotionally tied to it. That's why many victims forget even happy moments, and because they happened just before the tragedy. She spent the night there still, wrapped in unanswered questions. The silence of the night echoed the conflicts burning inside her. Could it all be real? Had she truly been loved? Why could the simple memory of a nearly unknown touch warm her chest so intensely? Her heart was sending signals, but her mind was still a maze, and she was at its center, stumbling in the dark. Meanwhile, Akil stood in the hallway watching from a distance. He didn't enter, didn't try anything else that night. He knew her reunion with her own story had to happen in its own time. To force it would be like picking a flower before it's ready to bloom. He simply waited, silently, hoping that the lavender, the same scent he used on the letters he left on her pillow during work trips, might be enough to awaken her soul, even if her mind still couldn't remember his name. Sometimes memories don't return as words. They come back as gestures, scents, shivers. And in that moment, the battle between a forgotten past and a confused present had only just begun. Have you ever missed something you couldn't even explain? If yes, share with us in the comments. What scent, song, or image once triggered something deep inside you without warning? They say true love doesn't give up easily. But what do you do when the person you love no longer remembers what you lived together? Akil had heard it from close friends, doctors, even strangers, all offering the same advice: let her go. But something deep inside him refused the easy way out, because he knew what they had wasn't built on convenience or fleeting attraction. It had been forged, fight after fight, gesture after gesture, and even if her eyes now looked blank when it came to the past, his heart still saw every detail with perfect clarity. That's when he made his decision. If he had to start over from zero, he would. Not with urgency, not with demands, but with the humility of someone who understands that loving is, sometimes, simply waiting. He bought simple flowers, the same kind she once said she liked. He placed them in a glass jar in her room and left without a word. Then showed up at breakfast the next day wearing a crooked smile and telling a silly joke about a baker and a parrot. Kemi looked at him, expressionless, but it took her 1 extra second to look away. That was all he needed. 1 extra second. A crack in the wall. Over the next few days, she began to notice his presence, not as a threat, but as a constant. He was there when the doctor walked in, there when the test results arrived, there when hard words tried to explain what was going on in her mind. He never asked, never pressured, he simply was. And that being there became oddly unsettling, but not in a bad way. It was like feeling warmth without knowing where the sun was, and Kemi, even without knowing. Why began to notice? She slept better on the days he said something about the weather before leaving. She missed the sound of his footsteps in the hallway, but her body still flinched with instinct. When he came too close, she'd tense up. When he tried to touch her hand, she'd pull away. Still, there were cracks. One day, watching him try to arrange fresh flowers, She muttered, "The last ones lasted longer." It struck like lightning through a silent storm. He froze. So did she, because she didn't even remember saying something so intimate. It was like the words had come from a place her mind wanted to deny, but her heart had already begun to rediscover. That phase felt like walking barefoot over shards of glass. One wrong step, and everything could bleed again. But Akil kept the pace slow, respectful. He only showed photos when she seemed curious. He never told their stories with ownership, but as if speaking of two people he deeply admired. And slowly, Kemi began to listen. Without anger, she started looking at the photos for longer. One day she saw a picture of herself smiling beside a fruit stand. She laughed quietly and said, "Looks like that woman used to be happy." That was all he needed, because loving someone who's forgotten you takes more than persistence. It takes gentleness. And when she complained about the flowers, the jokes, or the scent of the house, he never argued. He'd just reply, with a soft, almost childlike calm, "I'm sorry, I'm just trying to become the kind of man you'd choose again." And that sentence, spoken at the end of a rainy afternoon, echoed inside her longer than she wanted to admit. That's how certain reconciliations begin, not with grand gestures, but with quiet silences, with warm tea left by the bed, with books that feel like they were chosen with love. Kemi still resisted. She still didn't know who this man was, but there was something about his presence that didn't fit inside fear, something that made her heart beat differently, even if her mind still screamed to stay away. Because now the battle wasn't between two people. It was between what she could remember and what she was starting to feel again. Do you believe it's possible to fall in love with the same person more than once? Write in the comments, "I believe," and let's see how many still trust in the power of love that begins again. Kemi's name was no longer whispered only on the corners of the village where she grew up. She had become a national headline, a symbol of resilience, social transformation, and hope. But without knowing it, she was also the target of a subtly crafted scheme. Amadi, a soft-spoken man with hidden intentions, took advantage of the emotional fog clouding Kemi's heart to plant seeds of doubt. With a gentle voice and convincing eyes, he claimed to understand exactly how she felt. He said he had seen men like Akil before, men who disguise control as care, captivity as protection, and more than that, he said he too had once been a victim of Akil. Every conversation in the clinic garden became fertile soil for suspicion. Amadi told twisted stories laced with half-truths, just emotional enough to sound real. He accused Akil of manipulating contracts, profiting from charity, and building shopping centers at the expense of humble lives. He spoke slowly, protectively, letting long silences hang in the air. Silences Kemi's wounded heart filled with fear and imagined betrayal. She couldn't remember the gestures of love, but she felt the weight of the mansion walls. She didn't recall the laughter at the market, but she recognized the unsettling feeling of being watched, and Amadi's version of the story fit that emptiness like a glove. He gave her confusion a new name. "You're not lost. You're waking up." Slowly, fear began to turn into anger, and anger into a desire to confront. That's when the idea of a public speech surfaced, framed as an act of freedom. Amadi proposed she take the same stage where just months earlier, Akil had been applauded for turning a traditional market into a modern community hub. This time she would speak. She would become the voice of those he claimed had been silenced. A wounded woman reclaiming her voice, warning the nation about the dangers of love in disguise. It sounded just, empowering. But behind it all, vengeance was hiding like poison in a golden cup. News of the speech leaked before Kemi's team had even prepared. Newspapers, social media, talk shows. Everyone wanted the exclusive. The backstage buzzed. Dress chosen, makeup artist booked, scriptwriters on standby. She was about to be heard by millions. But there was one thing missing. Kemi still wasn't sure what she would say. All she had was the doubt. And in front of the cameras, that doubt would be magnified. The night before the event, an envelope arrived at the clinic. No sender, just a single phrase on handmade paper. "You fell? Then sit here, girl. I'll hold the world while you catch your breath." It was the first thing Kemi had ever said to Akil on the day they met, when he passed out from the heat at the village market. The words stopped her cold. How did this man know that phrase? Why now? And why did her heart start racing in that sudden, aching way? Sitting on the bed, letter in hand, Kemi didn't cry, but she couldn't sleep either. The dress for the press conference was already pressed, the media team on standby, but something inside her was shifting. Not fear, not anger, just a hollow space clearing the way for the truth. And maybe in the middle of that silence, love had started to scream, right now, just as everything was about to collapse. Not all manipulation comes with shouting. Sometimes it wears the face of care. Have you ever been through something like this? Share in the comments. What helped you finally see the truth? Sometimes just one story is enough to open the eyes of someone still trapped in doubt. The stage seemed to tremble beneath her feet, not from instability, but from the weight of the moment. Kemi looked around and felt it. This wasn't just an auditorium. It was a silent courtroom. The microphone stood before her, cameras locked in, phones raised high. A crowd, breathless, waited for the words that, according to rumors, would put an end to a story the entire country had been following. But instead of rehearsed lines or fiery accusations, all she could hear was the pounding of her own heart. And it beat like a voice screaming for help. The heat of the stage lights brought with it the warmth of other memories, the smell of food in the air, muffled voices, dust rising from the ground. Her mind began to release images with the speed of a storm. The market, the crowd, the hunger, the arm that held her, a low voice whispering, "You're safe now." The face of the man who had become everything, and who just days ago was still a stranger in a world she couldn't remember. A tightness pierced her chest. The words she had memorized scattered like leaves in the wind. Her hands trembled. The microphone nearly slipped. Tears fell, uninvited, dissolving the walls that trauma had built. She could no longer see the audience. Emotion blurred everything, and in place of anger, a nameless longing began to rise. A longing for something she couldn't remember, but that her body, her senses, her soul had never truly forgotten. A whisper inside warned her she was about to lose something precious. If she stayed there in the wrong place, speaking the wrong words, the silence in the auditorium became deafening, but Kemi no longer heard. She felt, as if every cell in her body was screaming toward one single truth. Her leg moved back. The echo of her heel on the floor rang like a signal. And then, almost instinctively, she stepped off the stage. She left behind the scripted speech they'd handed her, the stares, the judgment, the expectations. She ran through the crowd like someone fleeing, a fire, or better, like someone chasing a flame about to go out. Faces flew by in a blur, voices called her name, but she didn't stop. Her body moved with the urgency of someone who had just realized there was still time. Her light-colored dress stained along the way. Her eyes scanned the crowd, searching for a spark in the dark. Somewhere out there, the man from the letter, the voice, the touch, the unspoken promise, was still waiting for her, and she needed to find him before fear won. Over love again. Have you ever felt like your heart remembered something, even when your mind tried to forget? Write in the comments, "My heart never forgot." Maybe someone out there will read it and see themselves in your story. The breeze that morning felt like the same one from years ago, back when everything was still new, when there were no promises, just an unlikely meeting between two wounded worlds. In that vibrant, colorful and noisy market, Akil stood still, like someone honoring sacred ground. His eyes weren't searching for stalls or vendors. They were searching for a moment, a frozen instant, when a fainting spell had changed two lives forever. And maybe, deep down, they were hoping for a miracle, not the kind that moves mountains, but the kind that brings a soul back home. Kemi's footsteps through the crowd were hesitant, as if her body moved faster than her mind. Something was pulling her there, though she couldn't explain what. There was an invisible call in the air, a warmth in her chest, a tightness in her fingers. And when their eyes met, time lost its rhythm. There was no speech, no rehearsal, just a silent certainty. He approached without saying a word. He made no promises, didn't try to explain. He simply took her hand, as if he knew the right touch could relight what memory had erased. The kiss was slow, respectful, but carried the weight of everything they had lived. It held the sweetness of their first glance, the pain of every separation, the forgiveness of every wound, and the hope of every new beginning. It was a kiss that said, "You don't have to remember everything, if you can just feel this." And in that soft touch of lips, Kemi's heart, faster than thought, unlocked what had been buried behind the walls of trauma. Images rushed in like windows flying open all at once. The hospital, quiet dinners, his soft voice telling her she deserved happiness, the day she said yes with tears in her eyes. Her body wavered, her arms reached for shelter. Akil held her, no hesitation, feeling the tremble that didn't come from cold. Tears ran down Kemi's face, not of sadness, but of release. Release from not recognizing herself, from not knowing if she'd been fooled by her broken memory, from finally knowing, as even for seconds, who she was, and with whom she had learned what love truly meant. She rested her head against his chest, just like she used to, and whispered, barely a sound, like someone rediscovering something. Thought lost. Can we start over? That question wasn't weak. It was powerful, because starting over doesn't mean forgetting the past. It means giving yourself the right to bloom where scars once lived. Around them, the market moved on. Vendors shouted deals. Children ran with sweets. Radios played old songs. But between two hearts, the world had stopped. And in that stillness, love was remembered, not by the mind, but by the soul. There, on the same dusty ground where it all began, a new story was born. No longer between strangers, but between two survivors who chose to love again after everything. To everyone who believes true love always wins. Today, it truly did. If you rooted for this reunion until the end, leave a heart in the comments. The cameras turned on, but today's headline wasn't politics or economics. It was hope. On screen, the entire country witnessed something rare. Two familiar faces, side by side. No masks, no rehearsals. None of the perfection the audience usually expects. What the eyes saw was far more powerful than any performance. This wasn't a celebrity reunion. It was living proof that love, when true, is stronger than forgetting. They weren't there to tell a pretty story. They were there to testify to what had survived the fall, the pain, the doubt. Akil didn't hold back tears when he spoke of the days Kemi looked at him like a stranger, and Kemi didn't shy away from admitting how her soul wrestled with a missing memory. Yet still, something inside her refused to let go of him. The audience didn't see a perfect couple. They saw something rarer. Two survivors who chose to begin again, together. Social media exploded, not with memes or mockery, but with comments from everyday people saying, "This gave me hope," because not everyone gets a happy ending, but everyone can get a new beginning. And what Kemi and Akil taught the world is that love isn't just a feeling, it's a decision, a quiet persistence, a memory built step by step, even when the past has vanished. Maybe that's why, even after so many stumbles, people still believe in love, because stories like this don't end when memories fade. They end when hearts give up, and they chose not to give up. They chose to remember, with the heart. Some stories don't end with happily ever after. They end with the courage to start again, even when you no longer remember the path. Kemi didn't just recover her memory. She rediscovered what no trauma could erase. A love that knew how to wait and fight until the very end. Because when the heart remembers what the mind forgot, neither pain nor doubt can stop the light from returning. New emotions are just beginning. Click the video beside this one and come with us on the next step of this journey that transforms. Until the next story.